Hello, everyone. I had promised that I would get to this book for you guys today. I'm so glad I got the opportunity. We are going to continue looking at the different Cinderella stories, and the one that I had promised today was Bubba the Cowboy Prince, A Fractured Texas Tale. So this book was written by Helen Ketteman, and it's illustrated by James Warhola. And I think you're going to find this story very fun, and it's going to be very different from, the Cinderella stories that you might have heard, because this is a Texas version, and of course we have to be bigger and different from everyone else. So we have, at the beginning, it's really cute, we have kind of a list of characters here. We have the wicked stepdaddies, the wicked stepdaddy, Bubba, Dwayne, and Milton.
Call from Ferguson, Matt.
And I'm sorry, I thought that I had turned the ringer off on that. I don't know how to use my new phone very well yet. But let's look at Bubba. Once a strapping young feller named Bubba lived on a ranch with his wicked stepdaddy and his hateful and lazy stepbrothers, Dwayne and Milton. Bubba's stepdaddy spoiled Dwayne and Milton no end, but Bubba worked from sunup to sundown doing the chores of 3 ranch hands. Bubba never complained, though. He loved ranching. Dwayne and Milton spent their days sitting on horseback, bossing Bubba around. "Get them doggies along there, Bubba," ordered Dwayne. "Yeah, and watch out for them cow patties," added Milton. "You know how Daddy hates for you to track up the house." Now, Miss Lurleen, who lived down the road a piece, was the purtiest and richest gal in the county. She owned the biggest spread west of the Brazos, and she loved ranching too. But it was lonesome work, and after a while she decided it was time for some companionship. "I aim to find myself a feller," she said, "one who loves ranching as much as I do, and it wouldn't hurt if he was as cute as a cow's ear neither." Miss Lurleen decided to throw a ball. She sent invitations to all the ranchers in Texas. Soon the day of the ball arrived. Milton and Dwayne spent all day getting gussied up in their finest duds. Bubba about ran hisself ragged waiting on them. "Bubba," shouted Dwayne, "fetch my bolo tie." "Bubba," shouted Milton, "get my boots polished." "Bubba," shouted his wicked stepdaddy, "brush them horses and wash that wagon." By the time Dwayne and Milton and their wicked stepdaddy were ready to go, Bubba was exhausted. Still, as they climbed into the wagon, Bubba asked, "Can't you wait for me to get ready? I want to dance with Miss Lurleen too." Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy hooted and hollered. "Why, you're sorrier than a steer in a stockyard," said Dwayne. "Can you imagine Miss Lurleen dancing with the likes of you?" said Milton. "Miss Lurleen wouldn't even wipe the dirt clods off her boots with that raggedy shirt of yours, and you smell more like the cattle than the cattle do." Oh, they're not nice, are they? Not nice at all. Bubba took a look at himself. It was true. He didn't have a decent shirt to wear. His boots were downright disgraceful, and he did smell a bit rough. Milton and Dwayne were right. Miss Lurleen wouldn't dance with the likes of him. Bubba hung his head and felt lower than a rattlesnake in a gully. Milton and Dwayne and their wicked daddy went on off to the ball. Bubba mounted his horse and headed for the pasture to check on the herd. The sky was getting darker than a black bull at midnight. It looked like a Texas thunderstorm was brewing. Bubba had just arrived at the cow pasture when a bolt of lightning struck, knocking him off his horse. Bubba was stunned for a moment, but when he picked himself up, he heard a voice. "Go to the ball, Bubba," said the voice. Bubba looked around. No one was there except for him and the cows. Now, Bubba figured he'd bonked his bejeebers out of his bean because the voice was coming from a cow. She chewed her cud for a moment and said, "I'm your fairy god cow, and I can help you go to the ball." Bubba sat up, rubbing his head. "Well, I'd like to go, Miss God Cow, but shoot, I don't have a thing to wear." The fairy god cow swished her tail, and Bubba's raggedy clothes changed into the handsomest cowboy duds he had ever laid eyes on. His jeans were crisp, his boots were shiny, his shirt was dazzling, and his Stetson was whiter than a new salt lick. "Why, I look downright purty," said Bubba. The fairy god cow swished her tail again, and a nearby steer turned into the most beautiful white stallion Bubba had ever seen. "Now, you go on off to the ball, Bubba, and have a good time dancing with Miss Lurleen. But you best be home by midnight, 'cause that's when the magic runs out." "Yahoo!" shouted Bubba as he jumped on the white horse and galloped off to the ball. When Bubba arrived, the hoedown was in full swing. But every time Miss Lurleen finished a dance, she yawned. "There goes another $10 Stetson on a 5-cent head," she complained. "Where are all the real cowboys?" By the time it was Bubba's turn to dance with Miss Lurleen, it was almost midnight. Soon as she saw Bubba, Miss Lurleen's eyes lit up. "Why, you're as cute as a cow's ear," she said. Bubba blushed, then took Miss Lurleen in his arms and started dancing. Dwayne and Milton turned purple with jealousy. "Who is that dude?" said Dwayne. "I don't recollect seeing him before, but he looks a mite familiar," said Milton. "Do something," said their wicked daddy. "That cowboy is winning Miss Lurleen's heart." As it turned out, Milton and Dwayne didn't have to do a thing, because Bubba and Miss Lurleen were in the middle of do-si-doing when the clock struck midnight. Suddenly, Bubba's fine duds turned into the dirty rags he usually wore around the ranch. He looked sorry, and he smelled worse. "What's that awful smell?" asked Milton. "Why, it's Bubba!" shouted Dwayne. Bubba turned 14 shades of red, apologized to Miss Lurleen, and ran out of the room. "Wait!" she yelled, chasing after him. But Bubba didn't wait. He jumped on his cow and lumbered off into the night. In the ruckus, he lost one of his dirty cowboy boots. Miss Lurleen clasped it in her arms. "This is the boot of a real cowboy, and the man I want to marry, and I aim to find him." Miss Lurleen went back inside, and though she asked everybody at the ball, nobody knew who the mysterious cowboy was. Nobody except Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy, that is. But they weren't talking. The next day, Miss Lurleen went from ranch to ranch, looking for the cowboy who owned the boot. When she came to Dwayne and Milton's ranch, both brothers tried the boot on, but it didn't fit. Miss Lurleen had just climbed on her horse to leave when Bubba rode up. He was dirty and sweaty and smelly from working with the cows, and he was only wearing one boot. Miss Lurleen jumped off to her horse and ran over to Bubba. "Try this on," she cried. Bubba took his dirty old boot and pulled it on. "Much obliged, ma'am," he said, blushing. It fit perfectly. "You're my prince in cowboy boots," shouted Miss Lurleen. "I'd recognize that smell anywhere. Marry me, cowboy, and help me work my ranch." Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy threw chicken fits. But Bubba just smiled, and he and Miss Lurleen rode off into the sunset. They lived happily ever after, roping and cowpoking and getting them doggies along. So that was Bubba the Cowboy Prince. And I hope you see a very different side of a Cinderella story, that it's not necessarily, right, the princess and the prince goes to find her, but it can be the other way around. That the woman can go find her prince as well, and that working hard has its rewards in the end. Some people would call that karma. Some things say good things come to those who work hard and are kind. But the lesson is always the same, is that the kind person here and the one that works really hard is the person that gets the reward in the end. Thanks for joining me for this Fractured Texas Tale. I'll see you guys next time as we go into a different version of another type of Cinderella story. Bye.